So, where was I? I want to explain what this particular episode of this podcast is. I'm recording it before I sit down and talk with anybody. And if you are just tuning in, this is a podcast that I did in the 2010s. And the idea of it was to sit and chat with actors, performers, creators, directors, producers, writers, what have you. People who I thought had a lot to offer the world. People who may or may not have gotten the acclaim that I thought their talents deserved. And for me, I felt a kinship with that type of person in this business. Somebody who saw themselves as a hard worker, somebody who saw themselves as somebody who shows up and does the work, and the rest of it is secondary to that. People who aren't in it for fame and fortune, although none of us would turn it down, but people who really are, let's say, working class actors, performers, photographers, writers, directors, producers, creators, period. And the idea was that we were the type of people who would bring our own lunch, as it were. Not have it necessarily paid for us, although being in the union, you do get, food provided for you in our contract, so that's a cool thing. But these are the people who would pack a lunch, bring it if they had to, if that meant that's what it took to be able to perform, to create. So that's where Bring Your Own Lunch came from. And I started it way back when, episode 1, in 2014. First guest was Abigail Shaman. She had happened to be the first guest on the previous podcast I did with my great friend Ken Pond, the Commercials Free podcast, and I thought it was a bit of a poetic extension of that to have her as the first guest, and went at it as hard as I could every week, trying to post a new podcast episode. Now, keep in mind, this is back when there wasn't really the same level of convenience that podcasts now enjoy. And in fact, I got out just in time for everything to explode in terms of podcasts, but that's neither here nor there. It was, for 50 some odd episodes, exactly what I wanted it to be, exactly what I needed it to be. A chance to highlight people who I thought were awesome. And at the same time, keep myself in the game, keep myself connected to people, keep myself in touch with the business and what was going on. And I'll be honest, at no point did I think about the audience that may or may not have been there. I wanted there to be people to hear it because I wanted to spotlight people I liked. And I'll be honest, I wanted to highlight me too. And it did provide an awesome creative outlet for me. In order to get this thing back up and running, I took the time to go through the episodes as they were posted on the website, bringyourownlunch.com, also now BYOLpodcast.com, in case you are finding this in some other way. And I was kind of amazed. The stories that I told, or at least the stories that I promoted in the blurb for each episode, some of them I didn't even remember talking about. Some of them I didn't even remember doing. And if I do, in fact, go back and listen, it's going to be fun to retrace my steps. And retracing my steps is the reason why I'm doing this particular episode right here. It's because I wanted to talk about why I stopped doing Bring Your Own Lunch. And in order for me to move forward, I have to go back and contend with the past 10 years since I last posted an episode of this podcast. I want to do it because one of the major reasons I stopped is because I didn't think I could continue and be honest with the world. As I say that out loud, it just sounds so ridiculous, but it's true. And you'll find out why. And this is a good time for me to say to you, what I will be talking about involves illness and death and particularly suicide. And if those topics are uncomfortable for you, I totally understand if you want to hit stop now and go on to listen to something else, anything else. Because I know how I feel when I'm confronted with those topics on an ongoing basis, particularly over the last 5 to 7 years. So here we go. The last episode I released of Bring Your Own Lunch was just before Thanksgiving 2015. It's amazing to think there have been 10 years since then. I can't even really believe it, and we all went through some stuff in the interim, and we'll get into that. So for all of us, time is weird anyway, but thinking of 10 years as a stretch of time feels monumental. I mean, it's generational. We grew up thinking, oh, that was the 40s, that was the 50s, that was the 60s. So those are 10 years. And if you can define an era of time like that, well, then that must mean 10 years is pretty darn significant. While I was doing Bring Your Own Lunch, I was enjoying a pretty fun acting career, doing commercials and TV shows. And I had started a film festival with my friend Vinny Petrosini, and I was chugging along, having a great time. I will say it was stressful. I did almost every single one of those interviews in person, at someone's house or a studio or wherever I can find space, and that meant I was lugging equipment all over the place. It wasn't like today where you can just kind of bring your iPhone and hook it up and it's really, really easy. I had this whole rig. It was a thing. And I also had hurt my back pretty significantly. And during that time, I was in a lot of pain lugging that stuff around. I'd herniated discs in my back, and that was really flaring up when I was doing the podcast. So that was another thing. But that's the minorest of minor things that have went on in the last 10 years. So we're at Thanksgiving 2015. I had released an episode with Deborah Markowitz, a filmmaker on Long Island. And I thought to myself, this might be a good time to take a break for the first time. And I thought, I'll just give myself an extra week, won't release a podcast, and get right back to it. In fact, I had banked 4 episodes up until that point that never got released. The thing about moving forward at a steady pace is that when you stop sometimes, boy, it's hard to start again. And that's what happened. It wasn't because of the podcast. It wasn't because of the work of the podcast. It wasn't because of anything I was doing in my career that prevented me from doing that. The reasons were very, 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 very personal. And this is where I'll start with venting everything. And I want to acknowledge right here before I get started with that I do understand that this is very self-serving. This is something from me, and I don't expect anybody to listen to this whole thing, but my hope is that if you hear what I talk about and it makes you feel some semblance that you are not alone in the world, then this will have accomplished the only goal I might have for it, which is to A, tell what's going on for the record, so I don't have to repeat any of this stuff in any of the future episodes of this podcast or anything else I do if I don't want to, and to connect with people who might understand what I went through and continue to deal with, and provide someone else with the knowledge that there is somebody who understands what the deal is. Not long after I started Bring Your Own Lunch, my mom Okay. Sometime in the early 2010s, my mom, who was a very intelligent person who had a memory of a steel trap and had unbelievable directional sense, started to show signs that her brain was failing her. It started off small at first, but as things progressed, she started to lose her ability to recognize objects and then people, and then things got really, really bad. I know people who have also experienced dealing with a loved one going through dementia, Alzheimer's, and it is a very confusing, painful time. Watching somebody change that way is really, really difficult. And my mom, who could be my biggest cheerleader, who I was very close with, wasn't the same person. And it was really hard. It was also hard on my dad, who, by many, many measures, was one of the best people who ever lived. And he dedicated his time and his effort to taking care of my mom to a fault. So much of what went on in their house while all of this was going on, he kept to himself. Eventually, though, he couldn't handle it all on his own. And in 2014, my mom, who was very upset to think about her brain failing her and really deep into a very troubling part of the Alzheimer's dementia experience, got into a fight with my dad, and she threatened to kill herself. And my dad, being the loving, caring person he is, called an ambulance and had my mom taken to the hospital because he just didn't know what else to do. So that was in September 2014. One of the things about my dad is that, for better or worse, he didn't share his burdens with others. He would call it keeping the lid on the garbage can. And this is a pretty good example of that, because he begged me not to let my mom know that I knew that she had gone to the hospital because she had threatened to take pills and kill herself. And as I am my father's son, I never talked about this with anybody outside of my wife and my sister and my dad. So I tucked that away. And tucking that away is sort of like my motif for anything negative. I don't do a lot of talking about things that are bad in my life with a lot of people. The people I do share with, man, I overwhelm them. They've had enough. And again, this is sort of designed for me to put something out there that I can't take back. So that's part of this whole idea behind this podcast here, is that I'm doing something that's extraordinarily uncomfortable, but I think will be better for me in the long run. While my mom was in the hospital, she had an outburst and tried to slit her wrists with the lenses from her glasses. She didn't succeed, but it really did change everything. You know, it's one thing to threaten something, it's another thing to show that you're actually willing to go ahead and do it, and that to me was petrifying. And I can say that that day in September changed me immensely. Shook me to my core, no doubt about it. Ultimately, my dad and my mom moved closer to where I live now, and we got to spend more time with her, although spending more time with her meant watching more of her decline. To say I was feeling a lot of stress and not doing anything about it in a very helpful way is putting it very lightly. One thing I did have was an experience working with a therapist. And I would say that if you have issues that you are having trouble with, absolutely get help. Go to a professional who can guide you. And it may be like, finding a car. You might have to go to a couple different dealerships, talk to a couple different dealers, and test drive. It may not fit the first one you go to, may not fit the second one you go to, but eventually keep going. You will find somebody who can help you, and that'll come up later. So I put the podcast on pause in November 2015. thinking I'd go back to it, but once I stopped, all that stuff from the previous year flooded. And I stopped. I stopped doing the film festival, which I had been doing on a monthly basis, and I loved doing it. It was awesome. I got to host it, and I got to work on it with a good friend and network and do all the fun things that we would do as creators to make ourselves available for the next thing that comes along. But stopping felt so good. I was also raising 2 small kids, which I will never regret, never say anything badly about. And I mean that. I'm not just covering over. I love being a dad. I indulged in that intensely. But the pressures of having a career, the pressures of raising a family, the pressures of having a mom who was rapidly and steadily declining was a lot. I don't know where I heard this, but I heard that when you watch somebody with Alzheimer's, it's like you're constantly mourning the person that they were yesterday, because the person you're getting today is just very different from the one that you may have talked to last. And it's true. It's a real rough truth that you're constantly in mourning. And we were as honest as we could be with our kids, but our kids were little. Real little. So they understood it on their level, but there wasn't anybody for me to really rely on except for my wife, Stephanie, who has spent an inordinate amount of time dragging me through the mud that hit me like a tidal wave since 2014. There's stuff that happened in between. Good stuff. But in August of 2017, I took my kids to the pool on the last day that the pool would be open. And there I got a call from my dad, who let me know that my mom had finally passed. I had seen her a few days before, and she was nonverbal. She wasn't able to communicate in any way, but I know at least I got to say goodbye and I love you one more time, and I will be grateful for that forever. She was going to hospice that day, and the tech who showed up thankfully was there when she left. And that was it. I can't say that I dealt with it immediately. Like many other times in my life, I buckled up, stiff upper lip, made a post on Facebook, and moved on. Of course I was sad. Of course I was grieving, but I wasn't allowing myself the full benefit of just saying, you know what, you lost your mom, and she'd been dying for 10 years. It's okay to feel this. But that's not what I was capable of doing. We had a memorial for my mom a month or two later. She was not one for funerals, but we wanted to have a ceremony. My dad put it together mostly with my sister, and it was beautiful, and we had a lot of family show up, and we told stories, and it was good. That night, my dad had a heart attack. Now, I should tell you that he ended up making it through that. I should also let you know that he had several heart attacks throughout his life. And in fact, he had gone through so many procedures. He went through open heart surgery when I was 16. He had so many stents. He had, I think it was 17 stents put in. If you don't know what stents are, S-T-E-N-T-S, look them up because you'll find that is an unbelievable number of stents for a person to have. I would joke that he was more stents than man. So heart conditions and heart episodes were not new with my dad, but it was a lot. But like I said, he made it through. And it's weird to say, but after that, it sort of was just status quo. My career was going up in places. It was steady in other places. It was declining a little bit in other places, but for the most part, I was making things happen. I was chugging along. I was doing the things that I wanted to do, but also similar to the situation with my mom being sick, her death, I never stopped to actually let myself properly deal with all the emotions that went with it, good, bad, otherwise. And whatever issues I had with my mom, whatever good, bad, otherwise feelings I had about my mom, I just didn't deal with any of them other than maybe talking to Stephanie about it. I did have one weapon in my arsenal, and I don't talk about this either. I haven't talked about it, and I've avoided unless it was with some close friends, but I've been on medication for a long time. For anxiety, for depression. And those medications have been extraordinarily helpful dealing with a lot of things that I have no control over, brain chemicals, what they're supposed to deal with. But the bad part is that it made me numb to things that I truly did need to work on. So it was a double-edged sword. I do believe medication is extremely helpful for people going through anxiety, depression. I can vouch for that. I don't know if I could be as comfortable talking anywhere if it weren't for medication, but it's medication and therapy. Now, I mentioned that you do need to find a therapist who works for you, and I do encourage you to do that in any form you find. I did have a therapist, but I will say right now, right here, that I did not do a good job of being a patient in therapy because I skirted all the feelings I could have dealt with a good therapist. And the woman I did talk to was very good. She was very, very nice, and I liked talking to her, but I was really good at hiding the things I needed to really talk about. So, armed with my medication, the year's 2017-ish, took us to the year 2020. I think we all know what happened in 2020. It's no secret. It's nothing I'm going to spend a lot of time on. COVID. It affected everybody. If there's nothing else that COVID did, it made everybody stop and experience the same thing at the same time. Maybe not in the same ways, but we all went through COVID, so thankfully, there's a shorthand there. You know the deal. We all got separated. We all got quarantined. We all got isolated. And the thing you need to know about, as far as this business goes, if you're not in the business and you may not realize, is that we went from a business where everybody saw each other in person, and that's how we did business, to almost exclusively doing business remotely. Now, I know a lot of people work remotely, and a lot of people enjoy doing work from home, and I think it's good. For creating, for art, for this business, which is a people business, it's really hard. Really, really hard to adjust to this new life where we do not see each other on a daily basis. And I was somebody who would go into New York City 4 or 5 times a week, maybe more. And then, after COVID, I could count on my hands the number of times I've gone into the city for an audition, or for a booking for that matter. It has changed dramatically. I do all of my auditions from home, whether they are for TV, film, commercial, voiceover, whatever. I do everything from home. And that is a real bad recipe for somebody who tends to isolate himself from other people. I like being told I need to get into the city for an audition. I do understand it's not what we have going on right now, but I miss that part of it. I don't think I even really realized how much of a problem that was causing for me. I'd even say that in the beginning of COVID, getting that time where everything stopped and the pressure stopped and nobody had expectations because everything had stopped, that was a break. That was a good break, and I just enjoyed the time with my wife and my kids, and we did our best to get through it. But man, the business changed. The business changed unbelievably. Funnily enough, it was during COVID that I got the biggest job I've ever gotten in my life. Recording in the basement, I did an audition for a guy named Mean Gene Okerlund. If you are not a professional wrestling fan going back to the 1980s, Gene Okerlund was an announcer and interviewer for the World Wrestling Federation, along with other companies, where he would be the guy on camera, on the microphone, every Saturday morning interviewing wrestlers, and he was as prominent a figure on TV for wrestling as, let's say, Hulk Hogan. In fact, he appeared probably more on TV during that time than Hulk Hogan. And a lot of people know who Hulk Hogan is, who recently passed away. I had sent in my audition, didn't think anything of it, and lo and behold, they thought I looked enough and sounded enough like Mean Gene Okerlund to hire me to be on the show Young Rock. So in the fall of 2021, I packed stuff up and I went to Australia. Lived there for 3 months. It was as good an experience I could have ever asked for. The only drawback being that I couldn't see my family during that time. Australia closed its borders. I mean, it's a continent and a country, and it's surrounded by water. Not difficult for them to close their borders, but they were really serious about quarantining. I had to go in, and I was by myself in a hotel room for 14 days quarantining before I could go out into the world when I was in Australia. But when I went out into the world, nobody had COVID because everybody had been quarantining. So nobody brought it in, nobody left with it. And so I couldn't go home for Thanksgiving. I was away from my kids, and we actually moved in that time. Another stressor. We sold our house. We bought another house 3 minutes away, but my wife and my kids bore that because the day we moved, I was in Australia. Not an easy time for them. For me, a lot of sun, a lot of being surrounded by other actors and directors and producers and wardrobe and makeup and the PAs and just being surrounded by people. We all stayed in the same hotel for the most part, and I got to be in an environment where I was surrounded by really awesome people, many of whom I hope will sit down with me and talk about their careers at some point. It aired on NBC. I did 3 episodes. It was great. And it was super exciting. It felt like a fresh start on life. It felt like my career was maybe going to get a boost from this. I was feeling a lot of confidence. I was feeling fulfilled. I was feeling excited. I got home in time for Christmas, which I'm grateful for. And it was just really, really cool. It sounds trite to say that, but it was awesome. They did a Christmas episode that aired. I was in it for a little bit, and then I was in for 2 more episodes, and it's funny when you think you're on top of the world because there's no farther you can fall than being that high. The day before the big episode that I was on, Young Rock, this is the big one. The day before the 3rd episode of Young Rock that I was on, as I was planning to send some emails and posts out telling people how excited I am about it, got a knock on our door. This is going to be a little bit of a confusing bit here, but I think I can tell this and make it make sense for you. The person who knocked on the door was a woman who lived next to us before we moved. And she came to our door because the police had knocked on the door of our old house looking for me. She ended up talking to them and telling them that we had moved and didn't live there anymore. And they said, okay, well, if you happen to see him, give him our number. And she very kindly came to our door and gave us the info. She actually talked to Stephanie. She didn't talk to me. It was very strange, but Stephanie came inside and said the police were looking for you and they'd like you to call. Now that can never be good. I called the police station. It's a small town, so, it's not very busy. And they asked if I was home. I said yes, and they said, we'll be right over. They came to the door. I went outside, and they said that they regretted to tell me that my brother Jeff had died. They gave me the number of the police station in Rochester, New York, where my brother had lived for about 10 years. I called the Rochester Police Department, talked to somebody who confirmed that he had died, and I forgot how it was confirmed, but I learned that he had killed himself. My brother Jeff was born almost 5 years after I was. His birthday actually was 5 days before mine in March. We shared a room together. We were close, but we had lots of fighting, as brothers tend to. And not long after I got married, he moved up to Rochester with his then girlfriend. And over the years, we had drifted farther and farther apart. We would talk to each other on the phone. Sometimes he would come to visit. He never invited anybody to visit him. The last time I saw my brother was for my mom's memorial. And in fact, he's the one I went to the hospital with when my dad had a heart attack. And he had somebody new in his life. He was seemingly very excited, and he was on the upswing. And then COVID happened, and he broke up with his girlfriend. I tried reaching out a lot. I would email, I would text, I would call. I would send him videos that were funny on his birthday. And when he wouldn't reach back, I just assumed that maybe he just didn't want a relationship with me. I didn't think to myself, well, maybe it's deeper than that. But as it turns out, he left a note explaining that he just didn't feel that he fit in. He was in a lot of pain because of issues with his back, and he couldn't take it anymore. He was 44 years old. I never really truly got to say goodbye, and I wish I'd had one more chance to talk to him. And after he died, I did what I usually do. I put my head down. I tried to keep working. I tried to distract myself with as many things as possible. I tried not to deal with it. And as it turns out, I did a great job, because a year later, I had a real breakdown. I think the breakdown started actually physically when I was playing basketball on the day before New Year's of 2022 and ended up breaking a bone in my foot. I didn't get it really fixed. The emergency care said, well, put a brace on it and you'll be okay. And for months I was limping around, but I was hurting. I was hurting a lot. And if you have ever been through anything related to suicide on any level, I'm going to lay out what it was for me, and maybe you'll find some you can relate on some level to some of what I'm saying. But dealing with suicide for people who are left behind is incredibly difficult. If you have any thoughts about that, I beg you to get help. I do not believe that you would want to hurt the people you love in the way that it hurts when you are gone in that way. And if you've ever lived through the suicide of someone else, you probably know what I'm talking about. And I went through all the bargaining and the depression and all that stuff, but I delayed it as long as possible. And I hadn't seen a therapist in many, many years. And Stephanie said to me, look, you need some help getting through this, because she was seeing me do things that I never did before. Like, I was hooked on video games. I was playing PlayStation like a lot. And that wasn't like me. I was very irritable. I wasn't the person I want to be, for sure. But I wasn't exploring why. And that started a ride. Not a fun ride. I decided to try online therapy. Now, if you are somebody who needs help, you may find that online therapy is awesome for you. So I do not want anything I'm saying to disparage the general idea of getting help in any form possible that works for you. For me, I ended up getting matched up with a nurse practitioner. And I told her that, I don't know, I haven't really been feeling like I've been dealing with things. I feel maybe a little bit numb, and I'm wondering if maybe the medication I've been on that forever has gotten me to the point where I can't really feel the feelings I need to feel. And she took me off of the medication that I'd been on for a long time. Initially, I was like, whoa, wow, I'm feeling a lot of stuff. This is great. I'm feeling a lot of things, and these are all good feelings that I'm having. And there was an initial sort of euphoria of being off medication for the first time in many, many years, and that gave me a false sense of security. I also talked to a therapist separately from this nurse practitioner, and I was talking about things. And it was like, okay, I'm starting to deal with this. That was in March of 2023. In May of 2023, a year after my brother committed suicide, I fell down hard. It was, I am sure, a combination of many things, going all the way back to my mom and before. Unresolved issues in my childhood, lots of stuff that I hadn't really ever dealt with on an emotional, psychological level. But everything from my mom to my brother to COVID and the mourning that we all felt losing that time in our lives, whether it was professionally or personally or the people we lost or anything. COVID was a need for mourning that many of us have not fully investigated to the degree we all should. But starting around Father's Day in 2023, everything just collapsed. And I went into the worst depression I have ever been in my entire life. And the online nurse practitioner I was working with, I don't believe really knew how to help me. She just kept changing my medication and changing my medication and changing my medication. And what I was really going through was massive withdrawal from the medication I'd been on for 20 years. And in fact, it's a medication that is known for causing heroin-like withdrawal if you do it too quickly. And I was doing it. I had done it way too quickly. I don't think it was good advice. The therapist was very, very kind and very, very understanding, but the system that was set up was very difficult to navigate and did not allow me to get the help as regularly as I needed. I needed to talk to somebody on a regular basis and get me fixed up so that I can deal with my stuff and move on. Instead, I was drowning in withdrawal and depression, and I couldn't talk to somebody because the online scheduling thing wouldn't let me schedule more than a week in advance. And often I would get to the end of my session, then I could schedule another session, but they were all booked up. So you can see why it wasn't working for me. For the first time in my life, I experienced something that I'd heard about, but I never had really seen in person to me or anybody else. I had literal insomnia. For about a month, I didn't sleep more than a few minutes at a time. I would stay up all night. I kept the room dark, and I would just on repeat, listen to movies over and over and over again because I couldn't sleep. I tried to do all the things you might do as a DIY solution, and none of it worked. It was scary, and I lost like 30 pounds in a month. It was the scariest time in my life because I was scared for me and that this was over for me. Meanwhile, I was haunted by what had happened with my brother, and I just did not see any good in the world. And I wasn't there for my kids. I wasn't there for Stephanie. I wasn't there for my dad. I wasn't there for my sister. I wasn't there for anybody. And I would audition through it, and I would try to get work, but I was really miserable. I was really, really miserable. But kind of the universe took care of everything because in May of 2023, the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, went on strike. So there wasn't any TV being made. So hooray. And there wasn't films being made. Hooray. Nothing to audition for there. So, Dave, you could fall apart all you want. While all of this was happening, and there are a million things I could go into in detail, but I'm not going to because it's probably too much. Having daily panic attacks, annoying the heck out of Stephanie, who was so supportive during that time. She was so awesome, but I needed like round the clock care practically. I need 24-hour-a-day hugs. That's the kind of therapy I needed from her. And she was working full-time and taking care of the kids as much as possible and trying to uphold all the stuff that we need to have upheld. That's usually a 2-person job suddenly became a 1 1/10 person job because I was just 90% not there. And we decided to work on getting me somebody local I could talk to. And by sheer luck and circumstance, I found a local psychiatrist who is a therapist, but also works with recovering drug addicts and understood my withdrawal very, very well. And it took a while. It took time for me to get over it, but his steady hand, his patience, his it'll be fine, no big deal attitude about it made it possible for me to get back to where I needed to be. He put me back on the medication that I had stopped, the one I was on for all those years, and gave me some sleeping meds so I can get some sleep. And it took a while to get a full night's sleep there, but eventually it worked. Eventually I was stabilized, and he transferred me off of that medication in a very deliberate, slow way onto a different medication. And that leveled me out. It didn't take everything away. It didn't solve all my problems. It certainly didn't replace the need to deal with all this emotional stuff that went on in my head, but it at least got me to smile again. On Stephanie's birthday that year in June, I remember being in the car, and for the first time in months, I started singing in the car. It was the first day I went back on the medication. I felt okay to sing in the car. And songs weren't making me cry spontaneously while I was driving. And as then when I kind of felt, maybe things will be okay. And for the most part, that was the start of things getting good again. But it wasn't linear. It wasn't all one direction. In July of 2023, SAG went on strike too. We struck against the producers of television and film, and I really didn't know what was going to happen. So just to recap, we had my mom's situation, my brother, we had COVID in there, and then I had my medication withdrawal and total emotional collapse. We had the WGA going on strike, and then SAG went on strike, SAG-AFTRA, I should say. And then on July 18th, 2023, my dad died. He had consistently been the oldest 80-year-old you ever met. He had energy. He had, he lived on his own. He was kind of remarkable in many, many ways. I love my dad. Oh, man. He was slowing down, but not in a way that made us worry about his long-term prospects. I mean, he was in his 80s, so, I was always worried. But there's nothing that seemed imminent. He was actually going to move to an apartment about 5 minutes from my house. I was going to get to see him more often. He was helping me tremendously, just talking me through all the insanity I was going through and all the feelings I was having. And there was a gap. His lease ran up in his old place. His new place was opening in a month, so he went to live with my sister for that month. Out of the blue, on July 18th, my sister called. My sister knew I was having a really hard time, but she decided to call Stephanie. Stephanie came downstairs and told me, while my sister was on the phone, that my dad had collapsed while everybody was out of her house except her daughter, my niece, Hannah. He collapsed in the room he was living in. And Hannah had done her best to do CPR and try to keep him alive. By the time my sister called Stephanie and was talking to me, there were paramedics there. They had been performing CPR for, I don't know how long, a half hour maybe. And they were saying they were not able to get any signs of life. So out of nowhere, over the phone, we had to make the decision to let him go. The world lost one of the real good guys that day. At a time when so many bad people seemed to be doing well, it really hurt to see him have to go. And I had talked to him a few days before. He was, just relaxing at my sister's house. He was, as always, coaching me through feelings I was having, and always with this undercurrent of optimism. Like things will be okay. And that's the true gift he gave me. He had said to me at one point that he had gone to therapy in college at Syracuse. And this was amazing to me because my dad didn't really strike me as a guy who was going to talk much about anything that he felt. But he did. And the doctor there told him, look, don't worry about getting 100% better today. Just worry about getting a tiny little bit better today and a tiny little bit better the next time. Don't look at it in terms of day to day. And it's only just now. I mean, I'm serious. I'm only just now realizing that that was his philosophy on business too. He owned his own business, and he said, I don't look at every day whether or not things were successful. I don't look at it week by week or month by month. I look at it year to year. You can look at life year to year and judge truly how things are going. If you go day to day, you drive yourself nuts. And it's only really, I'm serious. Like it's only just now that I realized that's the same thing he did psychologically for himself, as he just said, okay, is today better than yesterday? Then that's good enough for now. And we'll look at the whole thing and figure it all out once we have a bigger picture. And that's been how I've looked at things for a long time. That's how I looked at things as an actor. I took a cue from him. And in the last 5 years, I've really been struggling day to day. And I suddenly maybe realized that, looking at it month to month, year to year is a lot easier to diagnose and to work on. Day to day is too hard, man. So we lost my dad in July of that year. Thankfully, I was in therapy. Thankfully, I was back on medication that was working. And thankfully, I had my wife and my kids. And I was, dealing with it with my sister because there were 5 of us and it's just me and my sister now. Still had the career problems. SAG was on strike until November of that year. And once November happened, it's not like anything was going to rev up right away. So the industry has been recovering slowly since then, let's say. But I figured, you know what? Okay, year to year. Year to year, 2024 will be better. January was quiet in 2024, but that was not unexpected. Figured, hey, we got a lot of months left to go here. So, if you're not familiar with how things work in the business, you have an agent. Your agent is the one who gets you auditions. They send them to you. You do the audition for a casting director. The casting director tells the agent, hey, we'd like to hire Dave. And your agent calls you. And I've had a few agents over the years, but in February 2024, I had agents for on-camera commercials and voiceovers. In February 2024, I had been signed with A3, which used to be called Abrams Artists, and I was with them for many, many years. And they were doing their best, but when Abrams became A3 is because it was sold to a group, and the group was led by somebody who really didn't handle his business very well. It's all public record. I don't want to start getting into the details, but look it up, A3 Artists, and find out why they closed in February 2024. So my voiceover agent was gone in the midst of all of this. That was tough. But I was still with another agency for on-camera commercials, KMR, my old agent, Tracy Goldblum, who I have stuck with for many, many years. And when she moved to KMR from Abrams, she asked me to go along with her, and I was like, I would be absolutely honored to do that. And then we found out in March of 24 that KMR was shutting down. So in the space of a few weeks in 2024, I no longer had a voiceover agent, and I no longer had an on-camera commercials agent. Now, the nice thing is being with Tracy Goldblum means you are with one of the real, true legends of the business, and she was quickly snapped up by a company called BBR out of Los Angeles. They hired her to set up the office in New York, and lo and behold, I have a new commercial agent, and that was a very smooth, easy process, and I am grateful to Tracy immensely for making that possible. Voiceovers suddenly became flooded with a lot of people who were no longer represented in the business. And it took a little bit more time than that, but one of the former agents at Abrams/A3, Keegan Montecuculi, I got in touch with him, and he was hired by the Osbrink agency out of Los Angeles to head up the New York office of their voiceover department. And lo and behold, I had a new voiceover agent, and I am entirely grateful to them, and especially to Keegan, for bringing me on board and keeping me going in a very ridiculously difficult time in this business. So that pretty much sums up all the things that I could refer back to and all the trials and tribulations I've been through. It wasn't immediate that I was back on my feet and feeling awesome. In fact, as of this day in early December 2025, I'm feeling much better. I'm feeling way, way, way better. And it's because I had supportive people, and it's because I had the benefit of therapy and medication, and I had good relationships with people throughout my career who allowed me to continue doing this. And one of those people is my manager, Barbara Schulman, who has been incredibly supportive. And I am so grateful that she has been willing and able to see me through all these tragedies and understanding that why I've had difficulties. And I am so grateful to her and Oxford Talent, which she launched into its current form with James Oxford, who was a guest on the podcast way back when, before he became an actual manager that he is today, and the management company hadn't yet been formed. So, there's a lot of poetry to how things did work out. And if I can offer one piece of advice to anybody in this crazy business, it is indeed treat people well, because you never know. I'm lucky enough to not have strayed too far off the path professionally, despite all of this, because I had good people to shepherd me through the hard times. And since I'm thanking people, I really do have a bunch of people to thank. This may be the closest I come to an award ceremony, so I might as well do it now. I would not be here without Stephanie. She got me through so much. And my kids have been amazing. They have seen me at my worst now and have not made me feel any less for it. And I could not be more proud of them for dealing with so much at such young ages and still being awesome people. It's funny, I as I was talking about them, I just got a text from my daughter because we're coordinating with my son about where things are and what they're doing after school. And no matter how bad things have ever gotten, everything is just a little bit easier knowing that I get to be a dad. And I'm grateful for that. I got to say something about Ken Pond. Ken Pond is a guy I've done tons and tons of projects with, lots of comedy, lots of laughs over the years. He and I did a podcast together, and we were both part of a sketch trio called The Commercials that I may or may not have ever mentioned on this podcast. I can't remember, and that's okay. Truth be told, Ken and I grew up in the same neighborhood, and Ken was friends with my brother before he was ever friends with me. He knew Jeff, and they spent a lot of time together, getting into trouble and doing fun stuff. And when my brother died, I think Ken was the first friend I reached out to because he had the relationship with my brother, even though they hadn't spoken in a long time. I felt it was important to tell him that my brother was no longer with us. And Ken was great. Ken was really supportive, and he and I have sort of been linked in a weird way over the years. I think it was a week in between when his father died and my mom died back in 2017. So we've helped each other through some stuff, and he definitely helped me through this. And when my dad died, he was one of the first people I reached out to also. And he and I haven't lived in the same place in quite some time, so we never see each other in person, but that connection will always be there. And I have to thank Ken for everything he did to help me out during that time. My sister, Jen, and I helped each other through that time, and obviously we were going through very much the same situations throughout all of this, and she and I are trying to get through it together all the time. And lots of family helped out on every side, whether it's my family or Steph's family or extended and chosen family. But I don't want to really mention too many names because I will definitely leave somebody out and feel bad about it. But my Aunt Lori was exceptional during that time, helped us out a lot, and I wanted to mention that. Some other people who just really went out of their way to just kind of drag me out of the doldrums over time. Brian McKinley, my old friend from Hofstra, who has a really awesome podcast himself that's dedicated to alumni of the radio station at Hofstra. Maybe niche for some, but an awesome job. And he was an ear for me when I needed it, and I wanted to thank him. Adam Chandler, also from Hofstra, not Adam Sandler, convinced me to get out and do things when I was nowhere near willing or able or wanting to connect with the world at all, but persisted and got me to connect with people, and it felt good, and I appreciate it. Our friends, the Nebens, they're local, and they were here for me, and they let me vent and maintained the friendship that's been there for a long time, and I'm grateful for that. I talked about Vinny Petrosini, but especially he and Alyssa Rabinowitz, after my dad died, came out and took me out to lunch, and that meant the world to me. Brad Aldis, who continues to invite me to do things and is great at connecting people, and gave me some really good advice and made me still feel relevant when the business was crumbling around me. My old friends, Elliot Chang, Pete Velios, got me to do stand-up for the first time in a long time. Those are my friends from Manhasset way back when. Old friends are super helpful during times like that, and old friends of the podcast and in real life and in careers. Tia Dion, Hodge, Jones. We reached out to each other during that time, and it was very, very helpful. Catherine Heller did a Zoom call with me, another old friend of the podcast who helped me think through some ideas of what to do with myself when I had zero idea of what to do with myself, so I got to thank her. I probably will be mentioning my experience working on Young Rock on this podcast moving forward, and just to briefly say that experience was incredible for me, and I made lifelong friends who I don't get to see nearly as much as I'd like to, but when everything went down, it was just after I got back from Australia working on that show. So I heard from a lot of people on Young Rock, and the thoughts that they expressed were really helpful during a very difficult time after my brother died. So thank you to all of you. Simon File. Real quick story. I reached out to him because he had hired me to teach sushi classes that he had started teaching, and he expanded a bit, and I actually got to teach people to make sushi, which was pretty awesome. I reached out to him because he was an entrepreneur. I was like, what the heck am I going to do with my life? The business is falling apart. Everybody's on strike. I don't know how to make money. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And I just called him because I wanted to, just get some ideas. And it was patient and kind and all that stuff. And I want to say this. I had auditioned for a commercial. I got called back for it. It shot in Florida. I was upset that I didn't get it. But as it turns out, if I had gotten that commercial, I'd have been in Florida when my dad died. And I'm glad to say that I was not in Florida, and I'm glad to say that Simon File was. Sometimes we have no idea who that person is who got the job. Sometimes our friends get the job, and I was glad he got the job. Steve French, who is a great voiceover artist and a super good guy, spent time with me just talking about the VO business because, again, I was scared. I felt kicked out of the business, and people like Steve and others made me feel like I still had a place, and that meant a lot to me. So I want to say thanks. Dr. Khan, you know who you are. There's patient confidentiality stuff. Adam Seitz, another guy who I've known for a long time, had given me opportunities to do some teaching, which I enjoy, teaching improv and working with kids. I've had a bunch of opportunities through him, and that has kept me going. And again, really, really helpful. And going back to when my mom got sick and died, two of the people I was working closely with on a project were Emily Batsford and Callie Moore. I was so lucky to be working with them at the time because they were really cool about everything. And when I needed time to just figure out the world once my mom died, they were super cool about it. And they both gone on to do some really, really cool things. And I hope at some point I get to talk with them. Many of the people on this list, I hope at some point to get to sit down with and discuss this crazy, crazy business of ours, but hopefully without having to refer to much of what I've just gone through. Now, I already know that just by default, I've forgotten to thank somebody who helped me through the tough times that I've just detailed. And I also do know that I didn't share that with a lot of people, didn't give people the benefit of being able to help, even so that some of them did it without even realizing that they were being so helpful to me. And I hope that I'm not hurting anybody by not acknowledging anything that they may have done. It's certainly not what I want out of this. And I hope at some point my memory, gets triggered and I think, I forgot to thank that person, and I will. But just know that deep down, if you did anything kind to me over the last 10 years, I was grateful. And I can only hope that I expressed that gratitude at the time, but if I didn't, I hope that some of what I've just said explains why. If you are listening at this point, I am grateful, and I hope that something I have said, something I have revealed, something I've shared has given you some sense that you're not alone in the world. And if you are feeling bad, more than anything else, please reach out to somebody. Reach out to somebody and just tell them, hey, I'm having a bad time here. I'm hurting. You do not need to do more than that. You just need to let people know you are hurting. It is not a burden. It is not asking too much of the world. It is not going to make them feel the negative things you are worried that they will feel if you share your burden with them. It is something I wish I had done all my life up until now. It is something I'm very, very hopeful my kids will learn from me. And it is something very much I wish my brother had done before he made a choice that he couldn't unmake. To my mom, to my dad, to my brother, I love you. I miss you. To all the people I have not seen for 2, 5, 10 years, I look forward to seeing you again. And to anyone who has ever listened to an episode of this podcast and took the time to get caught up with me now, I am grateful. And I will do my best to not let another 10 years go by. Okay?